Now, what are the frames in artificial intelligence or in a knowledge representation and the inheritance? So in artificial intelligence, and we have talked about the frames also, and we have talked about the basics of a knowledge representation here. Frames represent the pivotable or the pivotal concepts that helps the machine to understand and interpret the complex real-world scenarios. Now further improvement is there, originating from the cognitive science and the knowledge representation. Frames are utilized to structure the information in a way that allow AI system to reason, to infer, and to make the decisions. As we have discussed, three elements of a knowledge representation also. We need to understand the knowledge, we need to inference the knowledge, right? So, and we need to reason the knowledge so that the decision can be made by using that knowledge by a machine, because we are talking about these all terms in artificial intelligence. So we are simply enabling a machine to reason, infer, and make the decisions from a data that it's having. So it should use a kind of a data structure. And when we are talking about the data structure, here we are talking about the frames now. So what are the frames in AI? Frames are the data structures used in AI to represent the typical situations or the scenarios here. They encapsulate information about the objects, events, events here, and their interrelationships within a particular context here. Each frame consists of a set of the attributes, their values, forming a template for understanding the situation here. For instance, here or for a particular time, here we are talking about a restaurant frame might include the attributes such as the menu, wait staff, and the tables, each with its own set of details here, right? So in a menu, the menu can be further changes, or for a particular instance we are talking about here, right? For a specific situation here we are talking about, right? And what do you understand by the stereotypical stereotypical situations here? What do you understand by the stereotypical situations here, which is something you are talking about basically, uh, about a particular group or a particular places or a people or a situations, which is basically generalized or simplified, right? So we are just talking about the overview because we are talking about the encapsulation technique here, about the information about the objects, events, and their interrelationships. Encapsulation is simply the binding of a data or binding of a data here, or we are simply saying that just the name of a data we know here. So what is the concept of a frames? The concept was introduced by the Minsky in 1974, and it is the foundation in the field of a knowledge representation. Frames are designed to provide a structured way to capture the essential aspects of a situation, only the essential aspects of a situation, facilitating easier retrieval and the manipulation of information. Now the detail is not there, only the essential properties are there. They are to they are used for or else we are simply saying that they are a kind of a schemas or the blueprints that organize the knowledge into a manageable chunks here, which can be easily managed. We are not talking about the detailed version here, so that can be easily managed. And when we are simply saying that the complexity, which was the limitations, has been reduced here. Now, what are the key components we are talking about in our frames or the frame-based systems? Frames are essential for structuring knowledge in an AI. So here we are talking about the schemas here, right? Structural representation of a data in a particular AI system, and understanding their key components helps in effectively utilizing them. What are the key components here? First key component we will talk about the slots here. So you have main components of a frame along with the example to illustrate their use. Slots. Slots are the attributes or the properties of a frame here. When we are simply saying that what are the size of a restaurant, right? So basically we are talking about the attribute of a particular restaurant. Simply we can take an example of when you are taking an example of a particular entity or a particular person, simply the name of an individual, the age of an individual person, occupation, the address will be represented by these variables or the attributes So slots are simply attributes or the properties of a frame, or they represent the different aspects of a characteristics of a frame's concept here. Simply, we have taken an example here about a person frame. Frames here, slots might be name, age, occupation, and the addresses here. Another component here, we are talking about the facts here, which provide the additional detail or the constraints for the slots, or simply in every programming language, you are using this. We are using the variable names, we are using the attributes, and then further we are representing the attribute will accept what kind of a value, what kind of a range would be there, what type of a data it will accept. So simply the facts provide the additional detail or the conditions that imposes on a particular slots or the constraints defining the acceptable values or specifying how the slot should be used. So here we have taken an example of an age, which is basically we are saying that the age will accept a type of a data that will be the integer. The range can be from 0 to 120 and the default value, so it will not be inserted. So the acceptable value will be from 0 to 120, but it will not be it will not be inserted by anything. So anyway, so it will be the default value will be 30 here. So another component is the default values now. Then we are talking about the frames. So default values are predefined values, as we have seen in the age plot here, assigned to the slots if no specific value is provided. So they offer a baseline that can be overridden with no specific information. Here we can take an example of a car frame, which make default value could be unknown, model value would be unknown, year default value could be the current year here, right? So now the what are the procedures? Simply the steps or the methods or the functions we are seeing here. Procedure here we need to discuss. Procedures are the methods or the functions associated with the frames that define how the information within a frame should be processed or utilized here. So here we are talking about the account frame. Here we are taking an example of account. So here we are talking about a particular use case, you can say that, or a particular method or a function here. Simply here we are talking about how to calculate the interest, the procedure, a method to compute the interest based on an account balance here. So for a account framework, somewhere the interest will be calculated, and how it will be calculated, that will be have some procedure to calculate it. And frames, another component here we are talking about the procedure or the methods or a function. Simply when you implement anything in a programming language, you need to decide about its name in the form of a classes or object. You need to decide about its attributes that can differentiate the objects between them. Somewhere the generalization you need, or you need about the default values also, and you need to define or you need to create a procedure also. Simply the implementation here we are talking about in form of a knowledge representation, and we are simply taking an example of a book in a library management system. The complete frame for a book in a library management system we are talking about, right? So you can see here an example, and the example shows that the frame name is a book here, which is basically the implementing the encapsulation. We are binding the book information or the book detail data in a book name here. So frame name we have decided the book, then we have decided the slots in form of attributes. We are talking about the book can have a title, the book can have an author, the book can have a publication year, the ISBN number, and its gen, what kind of its basically book is showing. So and the each and every book can be differentiated based on these attribute values. Then we are talking about the facts here, which is the when we are talking about the publication year, we are talking about that it will accept a integer type of a value, and the range will be from 1450 to the current year, reasonable range for the publication years, and the ISBN will be the 13-digit number. The format will accept the 13-digit number. When we are talking about the defaults value, here we are talking about the journey, which will be unknown if not specified whether it's a fiction or what. So here we are talking about the procedure. The procedure can be in a library management system related to a book frame will be to check the availability and then to update the record also. Check the availability is a function or a method to check if book is currently available in the library, which can be issued to any user, or update record is when a method to update the book record when it is borrowed or returned, so that we can have a information how many books are present here. Simply here we are representing a book frame with the frame components, the slots, the tags, the default values, the procedures. And here we are talking about the this frame encapsulates all necessary information about a book and provides a mechanism to interact with that information. Now, what do you understand by the frame inheritance? When we are talking about the encapsulation, we are talking about the another object-oriented technique here, which is the frame inheritance or the inheritance. Inheritance is a parent-child relationship between the frames. So frame inheritance is a method here in terms of our inheritance, in terms of a knowledge representation we are talking about. Frame inheritance is a method used in a knowledge representation systems to manage and organize information efficiently here. It allows one frame or a child to inherit the attributes and the properties from the another frame or the parent here, creating a hierarchical structure here. So simply here we are talking about the hierarchical structure, right? Or we are saying that the frames are using the parent-child relationships so that the particular attributes and the properties can be inherited from the another frames. This method facilitates the reuse and then the extension of our existing knowledge. So, but when we are talking about the modular approach or the object-oriented approach, and then we are using the object-oriented techniques there. First, we have talked about the encapsulation and the abstraction somewhere, and now we are talking about the inheritance here. So, what are the key concepts of a frame inheritance? Simply a parent frame or a child frame here. What is a parent frame? The frame from which attributes and the properties are inherited. It defines the general attributes that are common to all its child frames. Simply, a person can be a parent class, and when we are talking about a university management system, let's take the example of a university management system. A person in a university is a parent class, we can say that, and the professors that are present in the university will inherit the properties of a person. The students will also inherit the properties of a person. A particular non-teaching staff will also inherit the properties of a person. So all these are the child of a person class. So first is a parent frame, the frames from which the attributes or the properties are inherited. It defines the general attributes that are common to all its child frame. Like when we are talking about a person class, we are talking about the person name, age, and each and every processor will have a name, age, or a student, or a non-teaching staff, anything. So here the person will work as a parent frame here. Then we are talking about a child frame. Child frame is simply the frame that inherit the attributes and the properties from the parent frame. So here we are talking about the professors or the non-teaching staff or the students can be a child frame here. It can add new attributes based on its situation, right? Because when we are talking about the student, the attributes will be the course here or the different, or override existing ones also to represent more specific information about a particular frame. Then we are talking about the inheritance hierarchy, or simply we are talking about the relationship between the frames, who is generalizing and where the generalization has been done, where the association has been done, or where the specialization has been done. All are the techniques of object orientation. So a tree-like structures where the frames are organized hierarchically. Each child frame can inherit from the multiple parent frames here, forming a network of relationships here, right? Simply, then we are talking about the overriding also. So what do you understand by the overriding? When we talk about the object-oriented techniques, we talk about the object overriding and the overloading. So what is here the overriding? When a child frame modifies or replaces an attribute inherited from a parent frame with a more specific value or a definition, with a more specific value based on a current data, right? So overriding will be done, and then we are talking about the extension here. Extension, or simply it can be help us in the scalability. adding a new attributes or the properties to a child frame that are not present in a parent frame here. We are talking about. Okay. So now how the frame inheritance works, how it works. We need to define the parent frame. We need to create a child frames from the various parent frames. We need to use the inherited attributes. We need to extend or override the particular parent frame attribute or a property so that the scalability issues that has been achieved that was having the challenges in the other represent knowledge representation techniques can be represented, can be overcome here. So what do you understand by the defined parent frame? Simply, we are talking about the encapsulation here, creating a journal frame with common attributes. As we have taken example of a person in the university management system also, and now we are taking the example here of a vehicle here. Vehicle frame might include the attributes like make, model, and a year, and every vehicle that we are talking about can have this, whether we are talking about a car or number of other attributes. So create a child frame here. Now, when the parent frame is a vehicle here, the child frame is defining a more specific frames now. Defining a more specific frames that inherit from the parent frame. For example, here we can say that a car frame might inherit some attributes from the vehicle frame and add a specific attribute like the number of doors here. Now, what do you understand by use of inherited attributes? Use of inherited attributes is the child frame automatically include all attributes from the parent frame, providing a structured way to build an existing knowledge. So again, inherited attributes or use of inherited attributes will be automatically be done in the child frame, or all the attributes from the parent frame will be automatically included in a child frame here, which provide a structured way to build an existing knowledge, or the proper structure or the data structure has been implemented here. Now, what is our override or extend here? Override or extend, modify or add attributes in the child frame as needed to define the representation. For example, a car frame might override the year attribute to specify the range of the acceptable values, right? So that a particular detail of a year here can be modified. Now, what again we are taking an example of a frame inheritance in a form of a library system only. First, we are talking about a parent frame, a library item, which can be a book, which can be other furniture also. So parent frame here we are talking about is the library item, or attribute is a title, author, or publication year. Then we are talking when we are talking about a child frame, it can be a book also, it can be a magazine also. So first child frame we are talking about a book simply, and in that case we are saying that it inherits the attributes and the properties automatically from the library items, which are the title, author, and the publication year. So inherited attributes will be the title, author, and the publication year. And the extended attributes here we are talking about the ISBN and the genders here. Now another child frame can be a magazine also. A magazine is also a library item also. It will inherit the properties of a parent frame, the title, author, and the publication year, but the extended attributes, which simply defining the magazine only, is the issue number and the publisher. So in this example, we are talking about the book frame, inherit the common attributes from the library item frame and add a particular specific attribute related to the books or related to a library item. Then the magazine frame also inherit from the library item, but also adds attributes specific to the magazines, which are the publisher here and the issue number here. Simply, now what are the applications? We have talked about the complete frame-based systems. So simply, what are the applications? Here we are talking about natural language processing. We have talked about in the reasoning also, in the semantic networks also, and now in the frames also. Because after that we will discuss the difference between the semantic networks and the frames. And then we will discuss the difference between the ontology also on all the planes also. So what is the application? So natural or NLP, in a natural language processing, frames are used to understand the context of a words and the sentences. For example, a booking frame might be used to interpret the requests for the reservations, extracting the relevant information such as the date, time, and the number of the people here. Then we are talking about the expert system. Expert systems can use the frame-based data structures to represent the knowledge about the specific domain here. For example, a medical diagnosis system might employ frames to represent the various diseases, symptoms, and the treatment options here. Then we are talking about the robotics. Frames helps the robots to make the sense of their environment by providing the structured information about the objects and their properties. How the structured information we are saying that with the help of complete inheritance property. This allow robots to perform a task such as an object recognition and the manipulation. Then the cognitive modeling. Now what do you understand by the cognitive modeling? So frames are used in the cognitive modeling to simulate human thought processes, right? Now the best application here in the frame we are talking about the cognitive modeling. By representing a knowledge in a frame, researchers can create a models that mimic human reasoning and the decision. So somewhere we are implementing a machine learning here, right? So what are the advantages in a frame? Organized knowledge, because now the data structure is more organized in form of a relationships, in form of an inheritance here, in form of a, because we are using the modular structure now. So advantages of our using frame is first the organized knowledge, and when we are talking about the object orientation or the module, simply we are talking about the reusability, and somewhere the flexibility is also there. So when we are talking about the frame-based systems, we are talking about the organized knowledge, flexibility, and the reusability. Frames helps in structuring the information in a way that mirrors the real-world scenarios, making it easier for the AI system to understand and the process here. Then we are talking about the flexibility. Frames can be easily modified or extended because we are talking about the modular structure here or the object orientation here. So we can easily modify or extend a particular function or a method or a procedure or a module here. So frames can be easily modified or extended to incorporate new information or adapt to the changing context here. Another advantage here we are talking about the reusability. Once defined, frames can be reused across different applications or the scenarios, promoting the consistency and the efficiency here, right? So what are the challenges that comes under the frames? Is the complexity again. Complex will be there as the data will be there. Managing and maintaining the frames can become complex, but it will be less complex than the semantic networks. Then the context sensitivity may be there, and the scalability. So somewhere these challenges and the limitations will come under the frames also. So in the next lecture, we will discuss about the frame-based system and another topic, the forward chaining and the backward chaining, and we will discuss few examples also.